Welcome to part 2 of the Bill Shankly story. And can I ask you to subscribe and hit the notification button? The first player he tried to sign, Bill tried to sign Jack Charlton, who he had always admired. He offered 18,000, but Leeds wanted more and the Liverpool board wouldn't back him, saying, "We don't pay those prices, that is what Everton do." Shankly always said that if they had signed Charlton, Leeds would never have been the powerful team they turned out to be. Bill had so many arguments with the board of directors, but they wouldn't change their attitude or their minds. He was on the verge of walking away many times, but thanks to Everton's chairman, who had provided him with a financial genius, Bill stayed. Every day he was on the verge of resigning, so he turned to his friend Matt Busby for advice. Busby, a former Liverpool player, had always wanted to manage Liverpool, but they only offered him a coaching role, which he refused, and he went instead to Manchester United. Matt had been a fervent Liverpool fan, and it never left him, so he advised Bill in the strongest possible terms to stay and battle his way through. Partnership that made Liverpool. John Moores, founder of Littlewoods Pools and chairman of Everton from June 1960 and a shareholder in Liverpool Football Club, recommended his friend, accountant Eric Sayer, to the Anfield board. Fortunately, they heeded Moore's advice and installed him as a director, and Shankly said later, Eric Sayer was a financial genius and a very important man at Liverpool. Far from backing away from buying players, he did the opposite. Eric quickly set about persuading his fellow board members to invest in Shankly's ambitious plans for the club. And I would suggest that without Eric Sayer, the task that faced Shankly would have been insurmountable, and he would have bowed to the inevitable and resigned. Often the man behind the scenes, Eric Sayer, is the important one, who is usually overlooked. The photograph you can see there obviously is Bill Shankly first of all, then Bob Paisley, Joe Fagan, the reserve team coach, Ronnie Bugs Moran was a coach, Ruben Bennett, the trainer, scout, coach, and Tom Saunders, youth development officer. And what a team that was. Joe Fagan and the boot room. Joe Fagan had a mate who ran a local team, Guinness Exports, and Joe helped them with training advice, so they began sending crates of bottled Guinness, which were kept in the boot room. So in the end, they thought they had better drink them, and that is how the famous boot room began. The fabled boot room was a den of ideas, built on a code of loyalty and hard work, which were the cornerstones of Shankly's upbringing. This small, intimidating location housed coaches like Paisley, Fagan, Moran, Bennett and Evans as they plotted world footballing domination over a cup of tea and at times some of the harder stuff. Roy Evans much later said they used to have furious arguments, but whatever was said in there never came out. When Dalglish became manager, the secretary asked him what he wanted. "Nothing apart from a bar in my office, so visiting managers can have a drink," replied Kenny. And that was the start of burying the boot room, and Graham Souness finally buried the boot room when he was manager there. Elton John, who was pictured there, always said he was more intimidated and nervous in the boot room in the 1980s than performing in front of 100,000 fans in America. The Eric and Bill partnership begins. At a board meeting in 1961, Bill insisted the club make offers on 2 Scottish players, Ian St John and Ron Yates, and their response was, "We can't afford to buy them." Bill actually told Yates that Liverpool were a First Division club before saying, "When you join us, Ron, we will be in the First Division." Eric Sawyer stood up and said, "We can't afford not to buy them." Liverpool had finished third in both 60 and 61, but in 1962 they won the Second Division Championship with Roger Hunt scoring 41 goals. When Bill first saw Roger Hunt play, he said, "Bloody hell, this one can play." In 62-63, Liverpool finished 8th, signing Willie Stevenson from Rangers and Peter Thompson from Preston North End. Bill said about Peter, "It was daylight robbery." Their youth system produced Ian Callaghan, Tommy Smith and Chris Lawler. In 63-64, they won their 6th league championship title in 70 years. In May 1965, Liverpool won the FA Cup for the first time in their history by beating Leeds United 2-1, which Bill described as his greatest day in football. The famous All Red strip is introduced. Liverpool's debut in the European Cup in 64-65 saw them play Anderlecht in the second round, and Bill decided to experiment following an initial suggestion of Ian St John's, who when he was 6 years old saw his father being carried out of the house on a stretcher, and he was covered in a bright red blanket, and that image stayed with St John for the rest of his life, and his father died soon after. The introduction of the All Red strip had a huge psychological effect. It was as if there was a glow like a fire was burning in Anfield. Bill said the players looked giants and we played like giants. And he actually said, when he signed Ron Yates, I could have played Arthur Askey in goal because he was so domineering. Liverpool dropped down to 7th, perhaps due to the lengthy participation in the FA Cup and European Cup, knocked out in the semi-finals by Milan. In 65-66, Liverpool regained the league championship and reached the final of the European Cup, Winners' Cup, at Hampden Park, where they lost 2-1 in extra time to Borussia Dortmund. In 66-67, they were never really in contention for major honours, but Bill spotted the potential of Blackpool teenager Emlyn Hughes, signing him for £65,000 in February 1967. Liverpool lost 7-3 on aggregate to a Johan Cruyff-inspired Ajax in the European Cup, 5-1 away and 2-2 at home, so Bill started thinking about building a new team. Of course, his critics and the experts said he should have done this earlier. Pundits and rank amateurs never change. Changing of the guard. Liverpool improved their league performances, finishing 3rd in 1968 and 2nd in 1969. But Bill would make significant changes in 69-70 when they finished 5th behind champions Everton. When they lost 1-0 to Watford, a struggling second division side, in the FA Cup quarter-final, it signalled the end for Ian St John, Roger Hunt, Jerry Byrne, Ron Yates and Tommy Lawrence. The newcomers included Clemens, Lindsay, Lloyd, Toshak, Hall and Highway. Apart from Hall, from the reserves, they were all signed from clubs in the lower divisions, or even non-league, which was Steve Highway. Adding the new players to Tommy Smith, Ian Callaghan, Chris Lawler and Emlyn Hughes, it formed the nucleus of a second great team, which would dominate English and European football in the 1970s. Bill had implemented a new scouting system in 1967 by appointing Jeff Twentyman, who played for Bill at Carlisle. It was always said that Twentyman was perhaps Shankly's finest ever signing. the inspiration of the new team, said Bill. In 1971, Liverpool lost in the FA Cup final 2-1 to Arsenal. But watching the game was another Jeff Twentyman discovery, Kevin Keegan, who cost £35,000 from Scunthorpe United and would become the inspiration for Shankly's team. In Keegan's first season, 1971-72, Liverpool finished 1 point behind champions Derby County, managed by Brian Clough. In 72-73, Liverpool won their 8th league title, and on December 30th, 1972, they beat Crystal Palace at Anfield to record 21 consecutive home wins in the league, a record that stood until March 2020, when Jurgen Klopp's team made it 22. The 1973 UEFA Cup success was a massive bonus when they beat Borussia Mönchengladbach 3-2 on aggregate. Shankly thought Borussia were the best team in Europe. The first leg at Anfield had to be played twice after an abandonment due to flooding. Shankly left Toshak out of the team, but then, after studying Borussia's defence, he recalled him for the rematch the following night. Toshak used his height brilliantly, laying on 2 goals for Keegan in a 3-0 Liverpool victory. The second leg was a different story, as Borussia took an early 2-0 lead and Shanks admitted he thought they had lost it, but they held on for a famous victory. A finale to a career that has never been surpassed. Liverpool were well beaten by Red Star Belgrade in the second round of the 73-74 European Cup and finished second in the league to Leeds. In the third round of the FA Cup, Liverpool had to score a late equaliser to draw 2-2 at home to lowly Doncaster Rovers, but won the replay and reached the final. In what proved to be Bill's last competitive game in charge, Liverpool produced a superb second half performance to beat Newcastle 3-0 at Wembley. He travelled back to Liverpool by train with the FA Cup by his side and his wife facing him across the table, but 10 weeks later he was gone. From May 4th to July 12th, 1974, it was about 9 weeks. The news shocked the entire world of football. He sent a letter to the chairman because he was mentally tired. The tank was empty. Bill would be dead in 7 years. He sent this message to the chairman: I would like to retire as manager of Liverpool Football Club as soon as possible, and would be grateful if you would take the necessary steps for my pensions to commence. Brian Clough, who had recently been sacked as manager of Leeds United after 44 days, was asked during a David Frost interview who he admired in football management. Brian replied, well, the guy who had my total respect finished a few months ago at Liverpool. He's a one-off. There'll never be another like Shanks, never at all. He absolutely lives the game. He's totally honest. He believed implicitly in what he was doing, and he was always above board. Bill moved from Melwood to Belfield. Shanks might have retired, but he still turned up at Melwood almost on a daily basis, and the players instinctively called him boss. In an attempt to keep fit, Bill began to join in the five-a-sides, and it wasn't long before he started to offer advice, so in the end, Joe Fagan and Bob Paisley took him to one side and diplomatically pointed out his presence was having an unsettling effect. Bill understood because he began to go to Everton's training ground at Belfield, which was overlooked by his own house on Belfield Avenue, and they made him very welcome. I believe the photograph of Belfield is a modern version and not the one that Shanks would have visited almost every day. The legend, the genius, the man. In April 27th, 1997, a plaque was erected in Glenbook to remember a young man who made his way in football with a unique style, one that cannot be copied. Maybe the enthusiastic Jurgen Klopp is the nearest to Bill Shankly. He conquered the world of football with his personality, and I don't believe there has been another one like him. Just imagine for a moment that when Bill started at Anfield, the club was a Reliant Robin, a three-wheeler van like Del Boy in Fools and Horses. Bill constantly upgraded it, and when he retired, it had become a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud, which simply needed a chauffeur to drive it. And Bill said later, when somebody commented that Liverpool were doing well, I could have left a monkey in charge. I will post a reminder from the great Len Shackleton. In his book, The Clown Prince, Len shared with the buying public his opinion of directors. In chapter 9, Len called it The Average Director's Knowledge of Football, and it received great acclaim from his readers who looked at a blank page. Maybe it wasn't only in football where directors are well-meaning amateurs at best, or simply incompetent. The way Bill Shankly was treated by the directors at Preston North End and Liverpool simply reinforces Len Shackleton's view. Desert Island Disc. Shankly, was he an old romantic? Few people would ever describe the great Bill Shankly as a romantic, but possibly he qualified after appearing on Desert Island Discs on April 25th, 1964 with Roy Plumley. My love is like a red, red rose. Well, it was obviously from the great Scots singer Kenneth McKellar. When the Saints go marching in, Joe Stafford, The Last Rose of Summer, Danny Boy, No Other Love, Joe Stafford again, Because You're Mine, Mario Lanza, The English Rose, Webster Booth, You'll Never Walk Alone, Jerry and the Pacemakers. And it was a fantastic list of songs. All these choices were dedicated to his lovely wife, Nessie Agnes. His choice of luxury was a football, so there's no surprise there. European Cup final in Rome, May 25th, 1977. Only when Jeff Powell of the Daily Mail rang Bill Shankly at midnight a week before the final against Borussia Mönchengladbach did he discover that Liverpool had not invited Bill Shankly to attend. Powell said he could travel with him at the Daily Mail's expense, but 5 days before the final at 7 o'clock, Bill rang Powell to say Liverpool had invited him, but only after finding out he was going with the Daily Mail. Bill said he understood and wished him well, but Shankly said, they only invited me after finding out about the Daily Mail's offer, so I'm still coming with you, if that's all right. They met at Heathrow, Bill wearing a grey suit and his Liverpool scarf round his neck, and he was immediately mobbed by fans, which would happen every day until they returned home. They were booked into the Excelsior Hotel, the grandest of all Roman hotels. Cut glass chandeliers bedecked in velvet and gold, and they had the finest twin-bedded room on the first floor, overlooking the Via Veneto, historic resting place of presidents, prime ministers and kings. Powell had asked Bill if he wanted a single room, and when Jeff Powell asked Bill if he wanted a single room, Bill said, on every away trip I have ever made in football, I've always shared a room, and I'm not going to change now. Come bedtime, Bill donned his Victorian nightshirt, kept his red and white scarf round his neck, sitting bolt upright watching the game build up on TV, saying, football is the world language, son. That night and the next 2 nights, Bill kept talking until 4 o'clock in the morning. Game day. Next day, at one of Rome's most fashionable restaurants, they dined with Carlos Alberto, Eusebio, Giacinto Facchetti, agent Gigi Peronacci, who brought along Enzo Berza, who would win the World Cup in 1982. Match night in the press stand, and Bill was besieged again by the press of the world. As the final whistle blew on a 3-1 victory, Shanks was on his feet, scarf stretched aloft. They flew home next lunchtime, shook hands at the airport, gripped like a vice, yet he would die in less than 4 years, cardiac arrest. But in truth, his heart was broken by severance from the game and the club he loved and had bestrode. Powell watched him walk away, short in feet and inches, but a giant in stature. Head high, scarf round his neck, only one Bill Shankly, the champion, and not even the offer of a complimentary ticket from the club he took to the summit of the game. Thoughts of a truly great manager, a very rare breed. Liverpool is not only a club, it's an institution, and my aim was to bring the people close to the club and the team, and for them to be accepted as part of it. The effect was that wives brought their late husband's ashes to Anfield and scattered them on the pitch after saying a prayer. I said to them, "In you come, you're welcome," and they trotted in by the dozen. One young boy got killed at his work, and a busload of 50 people came to Anfield one Sunday to scatter his ashes at the Cop End. So people not only support Liverpool when they're alive, they support them when they're dead. This is the true story of Liverpool, and it is possibly why Liverpool are so great. There is no hypocrisy about it, it's sheer honesty. When Liverpool lost the 1971 FA Cup final, over 100,000 fans gathered at St George's Hall, and Bill delivered his famous speech. Since I've come here to Liverpool, I've drummed it into our players, time after time, that they are privileged to play for you. And if they didn't believe me then, they certainly believe me now. Peter Robinson, the club secretary of Liverpool, told a reporter, "Bill's got such power of oratory that if he told them to march through the Mersey Tunnel and pillage Birkenhead, they'd do it." I like Bill's accolade of another great man. Tom Finney would have been great in any team, in any match and in any age, even if he had been wearing an overcoat. He was a 20th century Spartan, dedicated to football. Shanks took a big club which had fallen on hard times and rebuilt it with huge self-belief, coming up with such iconic ideas like the "This is Anfield" sign above the tunnel entrance and changing the strip to all red prior to a European game. But Bill died an unhappy man. His sudden resignation, perhaps in a bout of depression, has never been fully explained, turning him into a rudderless man without a goal in life. The Cop still remembered him on the 100th anniversary of his birth in 2013, and that you can see on the photograph. Bill Shankly died far too soon. More from the great man. Football is a simple game based on the giving and taking of passes, controlling the ball instantly and making yourself available to receive a pass. It's terribly simple. Football is a simple game made complicated by people who should know better. It's the greatest thing in the world, natural enthusiasm. You are nothing without it. When I have nothing better to do, I look down the league table to see how Everton are going along. Bill Shankly was famously respectful of referees on and off the pitch, but that didn't stop him from teasing them. The trouble with referees is that they know the rules, but they don't know the game. At a football club, there is a holy trinity: The players, the manager and the supporters. Directors don't come into it. They're only there to sign the cheques. I have spoken some wisdom as well as some nonsense, but I do know this: football is a cyclical game. Though I'm a Scot, I'd be proud to be called the Scouser. A wonderful record for a wing half. Bill Shankly was an extraordinary man who specialised in what he called the art of tackling, emphasising that it is an art, and he was never sent off or booked by a referee in his career because he perfected the art of timing. Shankly never argued with referees because his brothers advised him it was a waste of time, as the referee always wins in the end. His philosophy was to play hard but fair, with no cheating. Bill was always noted for his dedication to football. Maybe we have never seen anybody in the history of the game who was as dedicated, and in his playing days he would do his own training during the summer months. During the summer of 1933, when he returned to Glenbook after completing his first season as a professional, he decided to develop his throwing skills. An exponent of the long throwing, he practiced by throwing balls over a row of terraced houses, and the small boys in the village brought them back to him. It's nothing to do with Shanks, just a proud memory of mine. In February 18th, 1966, I was captain of Golgate in the North Lancashire League, who were top of the league and faced Millenfolk Corinthians, who was second. We annihilated them 8-2 in the famous Liverpool strip, with Scouser Alan Jackson, who's middle of the front row, scored 3, I scored 2, Gordon Howarth, Kenny Beale and Bud Kitchen scored the goals. Our manager was Barry Hanson, who watched the game on the halfway line with an old friend, Ray Simpson. In the last few minutes of the game, a man said to Barry, "I'm watching your number 10, and he has been outstanding today. How old is he?" Barry answered, "Terry's 23 or 24, I think." "Oh, I'm sorry, but he's too old for me to take back to Anfield, but tell him he played a great game." 8 weeks later, on April 20th, I suffered a cruciate knee injury on the Giant Axe in Lancaster in the final of the Senior Challenge Cup, and I was finished at the age of 24. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the great Bill Shankly.